Canto 4, Chapter 12, text number 12. Tam evam shila sampanam brahmanyam dinavatsalam goptaram dharma setunam menire pitaram prajaha tam evam shila sampanam brahmanyam dinavatsalyam goptaram dharma setunam menire pitaram prajaha. Translation: Dhruva Maharaj was endowed with all godly qualities. He was very respectful to the devotees of the Supreme Lord and very kind to the poor and innocent, and he protected religious principles. With all these qualifications, he was considered to be the direct father of all the citizens. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The personal qualities of Dhruva Maharaj described herein are the exemplary qualities of a saintly king. Not only a king, but all the leaders of a modern democratic or impersonal government must be qualified with all these godly qualities. Then the citizens of the state can be happy. It is clearly stated here that the citizens thought of Dhruva Maharaj as their father. As a child, depending on the able father, is completely satisfied, so the citizens of the state, being protected by the state or the king, should remain satisfied in every respect. At the present moment, however, there is no guarantee by the government of even the primary necessities of life of the state, namely the protection of the lives and property of the citizens. Paragraph. One word is very significant in this connection: Brahmanyam. Dhruva Maharaj was very devoted to the Brahmanas, who engage in the study of the Vedas and thereby know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are always busy propagating Krishna consciousness. The state should be very respectful to societies like the Hare Krishna movement that distribute God consciousness all over the world. But unfortunately, at the present moment, there is no state or government support given to such movements like the Hare Krishna movement. As for good qualities, it is very difficult to find anyone in state administration with any good qualities. Now, Prabhupada is really sticking his neck out, because administrators of governments are going to read these books and they're going to think, gosh, this guy is... we have to stop this guy. Unfortunately, at the present moment, there is no state government or government support given to such movements. As for good qualities, it is very difficult to find anyone in state administration with any good qualities. The administrators simply sit in their administrative posts and say no to every request, as if they were paid to say no to the citizens. Another word, dina vatsalam, is very significant also. The state head should be very kind to the innocent. Unfortunately, in this age, the state agents and the presidents draw good salaries from the state, and they pose themselves as very pious, but they allow the running of slaughterhouses where innocent animals are killed. If we try to compare the godly qualities of Dhruva Maharaj to the qualities of modern statesmen, we can see that there is no actual comparison. Dhruva Maharaj was present in the Satya Yuga, as will be clear from the next verses. He was the ideal king in Satya Yuga. The government administration in the present age, Kali Yuga, is bereft of all good qualities. Considering all these points, the people today have no alternative but to take to Krishna consciousness for protection of religion, life, and property. So that's a big assignment. Religion, life, and property. Because the religious organization such as ISKCON doesn't have the authority for property or life. Certainly religion, but not the others. And therefore, the understanding is as follows. By protection of and preservation of and propagation of Dharma, Dharma will see to the others. Life. Dharma rakshata rakshataha. And property. Now, protection of life doesn't mean we won't die. That's not a promise, because we're all going to die. But the untimely characteristic of death is protected by the principle of Dharma. Now, when the principle of Dharma is intact, then there's other factors. Like that is, three things. A contemporary situation is Ambarish Prabhu has been in the hospital and in the intensive care unit because of a heart attack. And there's been bulletins going out. I don't know if you're familiar with all of this, but his number one assistant was sending these messages indicating, please offer your prayers to Krishna, whatever can be done. And, the next day he moved. He was in Maine. He moved to Boston because better hospitals. So anyway, so he's now off a ventilator. So there's no guarantee that anything, but prayer is powerful, and a great personality, saintly personality, by his quality and his character and so forth and his service, he's being protected. No, not death will come, but he's being protected, at least temporarily, and so forth and so on. So that's one, like, contemporary example, like really contemporary, as of this morning. He's off the ventilator in the hospital in Boston, which is a good sign. It's not, could relapse or something, but it's a good sign. So he's being protected by Dharma. And the propagator of Dharma is, and those who follow that propagation of Dharma, they're protected. But those who protect Dharma are protected by Dharma. That's the principle. So how, back to the verse in purport, today people have no alternative. So to speak these things in a public forum is one. To put it in writing in the Bhaktivedanta purports is another. And then, leaders are going to read this, maybe. And if someone that's not the leader shows it to the leader, look what he's saying about you, sir. Then how enthusiastic is that leader going to be to endorse the spreading of Krishna consciousness and protection of Krishna consciousness? And isn't it a fact? Let's just take, for example, Rath Yatra festivals. We can't have a Rath Yatra without the permits from the city or wherever the place the Rath Yatra is going to occur. So on the one hand, truth needs to be spoken, and on the other hand, the truth may be taken as an insult because it's not complimenting state governments. It's something strong may need to be spoken. There's a nice example. There's several nice examples. One nice example is Prabhupada in Vrindavan in his final days, meeting with some of his godbrothers. And in a soft, whimpering-like voice, Prabhupada apologizing for speaking so strongly. And, in certain ways, criticizing. And criticism of a Vaishnava is an aparad. So Prabhupada was speaking in this way, nearly crying, apologizing to his godbrothers who were assembled in the room, before his final days, apologizing with tears for speaking words that shouldn't have been spoken. And then their reply, you want to do another garland? Can I trade you? Oh, uh-oh. That's a Didi garland. Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. That the godbrothers were saying, no, Prabhupada, what you said was true, and you spoke strongly because it was needed strong speech was needed. So it was in the mood of service, not the mood of vilification. Sometimes strong speaking is needed in the mood of service. Then who's to determine is it needed or not needed, and how strong? Where do you draw the line? So an acharya has that capacity, and he was being honored by his godbrothers that he did the right thing, and Prabhupada was not accepting that he did the right thing. Anyway, so that's loving dealings between very elevated Vaishnavas, without naming the names of who was in the room. Strong speaking is sometimes needed. So Prabhupada is doing that here in the Bhaktivedanta purports, because it's needed. Because it's in one sense it's like a slap, but it's strong speaking. The leaders are meant to be qualified, and here's some of the ways that's the verse, this morning's verse. These are 3 ways that are identified in. I'll read the verse again, where Dhruva, as the king, was accepted by the citizens like their father. And the father may at times chastise the son, or may embrace the son, or there's a father to son relationship, and the son accepts if the father is chastising. It's good for me, and he's thankful, not resentful. No, that's a good son. Then there's other sons, and so parents need to know. Parenting is a whole big topic, but parents need to know what's acceptable and what's crossing the line. What's going to produce what's wanted and what's going to produce a pushback from the dependent. But here it's not the case. He's dealing with the citizens in such a way that the citizens are accepting the king to be like their father, a father figure, and thus very affectionate. And therefore, if the affectionate king leader says turn left, they're ready to turn left. He says turn right, they're ready to turn right. Not by allegiance and obedience and blind following, but by, a transcendental dimension. And then the transcendental dimension is enhanced by this one word that's mentioned in the first line of the second paragraph, Brahmanyam. That is, as a king, Dhruva was very dedicated to the Brahmanas. And the Brahmanas, dedicated to the Brahmanas, means the Brahmanas would give wise counsel. And when the wise counsel was given, the wise king would follow the wise counsel and stay guided on the path of Dharma. And that's the message in the purport. The Brahmanas, one of the things that Brahmanas are to do in relation to kings or in relation to the rest of society, and we're meant to be such persons also, we're trained to become first-class men. That's Prabhupada's repeated statement. For the benefit of society, not for the pecking order of our ISKCON structure, but for the benefit of society. And then the function of the Brahmana is to speak the message of transcendence, to speak the message of the Vedas, become very familiar with the Vedas and speak the message. So different ways of speaking the message, through book distribution and through classes that are organized for people that are not yet first-class men to become first-class men by the Association of Brahmanas in a very organized fashion. In a very organized fashion can mean different things. There are different nomenclatures around the world for different ways of doing that, or within a community, different ways of doing that. But it's a function. It's a first-class men. It's a group of first-class men in a society where there aren't, to create and then perform. So as a king, he, Dhruva, valued and honored the Brahmanas. And then another feature as a king, he treated all with affection. So meaning those that aren't so qualified, he treated them with affection also, as an ideal king. So, how do you treat people that have their unrefined character and behavior with dignity and respect? You have to see what's what. If someone is misbehaving or hurting themselves and others and their little sangha, at some point in time, something needs to be said and done. But the something that's said and done depends upon the Brahmana or the leader, that caliber person. And in many cases, there isn't something said or done directly about a standard that's not appropriate. I mean, reading the biographies of the devotees, Prabhupada disciples that wrote their nice biographies of their life with Prabhupada. I'm currently going through one that's really very interesting. Vishaka, 5 years, 11 months is the title of the biography about Prabhupada and her life. And, you know, the place from which she came and how, even without saying things, he brought she who was in a, you know, very different orientation and disposition to become a Vaishnava without all the detail. You know, her background, education-wise and family-wise, was science and atheism, explicit, without retelling the whole story. And Prabhupada wasn't challenging. He saw everything, but he didn't challenge. And, you know, another example of one of those things that happened during Prabhupada's time, she and her husband were not married. She and her boyfriend were living together like, you know, man and wife, but they weren't married. And Prabhupada spoke about a principle in class, but didn't say anything to either of them. And at a certain stage in time, they wanted. But he lifted their consciousness to the point where they wanted. He didn't compromise in principle what the standards were, but he didn't command it or demand it. Anyway, he was an expert acharya, elevated personality that could lift people without confronting their, you know, misconduct. You know, if confronting misconduct was needed, like he's doing here in this purport. But there's a reason, and, you know, a time and a place and a procedure. And the conclusion in the Bhaktivedanta purport here is, it leaves people in the modern age having no choice but to take shelter of that entity, the mission that upholds Dharma, so they can have the Dharma protected, because there aren't the other agents that are government agents aren't doing that. Quite the opposite. Supporting slaughterhouses. And it's not just government agents, it's like society. Look around. Drive up and down the street and take a look, see what the eating establishments are. And that's the atmosphere. And it's okay. It's just norm. Just life. So it is degraded life. Without shouting from the rooftops, it's degraded life. And what to do about it? Elevation of consciousness, the propagation of Brahminical principle unto people who are willing to receive it, not to people who are unwilling to receive it. Anyway, there's a challenge involved. I want to say one other thing. This is this protection of life and property. Prabhupada uses the phrase at the end of the first paragraph and at the end of the second paragraph. I'll read the end of the first paragraph again. At the present moment, however, there's no guarantee by the government of even primary necessities of life in the state, namely the protection of lives and property of the citizens. Now, Vedic culture, this is Satya Yuga. This is at the very early stages of Satya Yuga. It's just shortly after Swayambhuva Manu, and then his two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, and the son of Uttanapada is Dhruva. So it's like third generation right after Manu. So it's very early in Satya Yuga, first time around of the Yuga cycles. And continue forward in time, a similar situation arose during the rule of Ramachandra. A similar situation arose during the rule of Ugrasena. Well, because it's within the Bhagavatam, and we're all quite familiar. There's a whole chapter in the 10th canto dedicated to narration, the narration of one Brahmana who had this terrible experience that just after his first son was born, the son didn't die, the son vanished. And then he complained to the king. What kind of king are you? Second son, some number of sons. And he was blaming the king. There must be some discrepancy in your performance of dharma, because otherwise the Brahmana citizen would be protected from this kind of anomaly. So I'm not engaging in sin. You must be neglecting dharma, because otherwise I would be protected. So this difficulty was the blame, or the cause of protection was absent, because must be some discrepancy from the king. So Arjuna, you know the whole story, it's a whole chapter. Arjuna heard this talk. He went to the Brahmana, promised the Brahmana, I'll protect you. I don't know what happened to your other sons, but I'll protect you. Tell me when your son is about to be born. And with his arrows, he created this impenetrable shield so that no one could come and take the sons away. And that when the son was born, the son disappeared. So Arjuna had given a promise: if I fail, then I'll take my life. I'll enter into fire. So as he was about to enter into fire, because he made this pledge to the Brahmana, Krishna stopped him and said, don't do that. I know where those sons are. I'll take you there. And that went. It was Mahavishnu who was busy being Mahavishnu and didn't have the opportunity to see Krishna, so he wanted to see Krishna, so he knew Krishna would come, and Krishna came. It's a nice, and then the whole description of the coverings of the universe, and it's a fascinating chapter. But the point being, when the king is pious and virtuous, like Dhruva was, then the citizens are protected. And they feel that sense of protection. They feel the fatherly protection from the leader, from the king, or whomever. And the discrepancy, if there is discrepancy, the blame or the responsibility goes to the king. So who can say what kind of culpability, karmic culpability, modern leaders will have for discrepancies? It's Kali Yuga. It's topsy-turvy chaos. And it would be foolish to expect otherwise. So what to do? Propagate Krishna consciousness. create first-class men. So then there's a great, we'll end with this. There's a great, say it 5 times, super great responsibility for those who are ISKCON personalities who are being trained, the opportunity to become qualified in the absence of a qualified leader, to become qualified brahmanas, to live life according to the standards of a brahmana. And that's a challenge because we don't have that upbringing. It's not the culture in which we're living. You know, in the world around us, and we're not meant to be isolationists, like cloistered little entities. We're involved in society, with looking around the room. People have occupations and they have interactions with worldly people. Here we are, in the middle of Michigan. It's not the compromise, the absence of Dharma is prevalent everywhere. So how to become ideal? And then that's a big responsibility, to become and then to live and to lead and not compromise. Anyway, that's the challenge and the opportunity at the same time. So it's good to have a little splash in the face. Please be aware that the intention of our founder Acharya and predecessor Acharyas to propagate the Bhagavad Dharma message and then to live it and propagate it further onto others, both by prachar and achar. It's a lifetime of service, and a very important service at that. In contrast, Kali Yuga, the darkest of ages, comparing to the Satya Yuga pinnacle, the very, very, very beginning of Satya Yuga, the first Satya Yuga, after creation. Big contrast. That's Prabhupada is writing in the purport, no comparison. There's no need to even try to make a comparison. But go in that direction. That's why it's here. The Bhagavatam is for people of this age, not otherwise. So it's not such yuga, but it gives us light and a direction to move in. Okay, 9 o'clock. A few minutes before 9 o'clock. Let's see if there's some discussion. I assume there's some people online, yes? Yes? So online people, if you want to participate, you're invited. There's a hand up in the back.
Maharaj, thank you so much. What we are encountering currently and what Srila Prabhupada was dealing with probably 50, 60 years back, what we are seeing is quite degraded from that point.
Yes.
But the efforts from the society like us is trying to make, and even Prabhupada said, even 1% of the people in general take up to Krishna consciousness, the vibration will be changed of the whole planet. We are so far from the Vedic culture. Apart from the usual efforts that are being made by our society, have you encountered anything in your personal dealing or seeing something that has attracted you, like, oh, this is the way forward, or this should be taken up more seriously? Because what we are seeing is 9 to 5 jobs, people working out, commercial, we are being part of the same racket or a circle where there is a very little opportunity to, share this lifestyle, or what, how would I say that, the overall, it's just not 1 hour a day or 2 hour a day process. You're adhering to the lifestyle. You're adhering to the, subscribing to the values, basically. So I just wanted to hear from you if you would like to share any of that. Thank you.
There's not several things. The question is broad, and there's not like a silver bullet. Rather, it's the stanes tatak shruti katam tanavan manobir. That's like our motto, and so we're the advocacy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted that as the goal of life and the means to achieve it. So the silver bullet is not hit the dynamite plunger and blow the whole thing up and come up with something else. That's not the model. So the model is, from wherever people are, stanes to tuck, engage in hearing, shruti gatam, tanavan madobir. So then amongst those that do that, one response in the premise of your question is there's an opportunity in the medium of the 9 to 5 people to be of the quality and character and caliber that impact people in the positive way, just by interacting with people that are the 9 to 5 people that you interact with, as opposed to the opposite, as opposed to being, one of the elements of degradation that just adds to the rest of the degradation. So, and you add it up over a population, and it has an impact. The purity, even as there during the 9 to 5 hours, you're not giving a Bhagavad Gita class. You're exhibiting the character, or not, of a person connected to the Supreme, and then live the lifestyle, and eat the foods, and speak in a manner that's becoming of a Vaishnava. And some people may notice, some people may not notice, and some people may notice. I've had this report back. Somebody will ask, like, what's with you? You don't get irritated and aggravated like other people in our little conference call. And you remain, you always have an answer. We just ask you and you've got an answer because you're thoughtful. And so, what's with you? People ask, but they may not ask, and that's perfectly fine too. So, by modeling, by being in the character and modeling the character of a Vaishnava, has its power. And then, depending upon the individual and the group with which the individual operates, there are examples of persons who are part of that employment circle that have a spiritual inclination, and then those persons outside of the 9 to 5 can take up. And then so there's it, just going back to the stanes to tuck principle. And then there's some persons that just not inclined. The 9 to 5 just doesn't suit them. And they do something else. And those that do something else, and there's different options of the do something. So that, the flower vase gets filled with all kinds of flowers. Depending upon the individual and nature and circumstances and training and upbringing etc. So my short answer is, starting with that principle, focus upon the hearing and chanting. And in addition, focus upon being of the kind, developing the achar and prachar that corresponds to a Vaishnava in all circumstances, and dedicate oneself for the mission of the Hare Krishna movement in principle. And it's going to take different shapes for different people. Then you can get into it, selecting this model, that model, the other model. It's a little bit, depends upon locality, it depends upon local leadership, it depends upon, it's like a japa retreat. Some persons conduct japa retreats this way, some that way, some the other way. It's all very fantastic. It's the focus, it's the principle of attentiveness to the activity of associating with Krishna through his name. So there are different approaches in different localities with different leaders and leadership models. So it's a long, very broad question, a long-winded answer. Short answer is Stanestita, Shrutigatam, Tanavan Manobir, Bhagavatam. Someone else?
Thank you, Maharaj. Mine is a very short question. You told this story. This is after the creation, the first Satya Yuga. Currently, now we are in 7th Mono. If this happened 450 years before, is it my understanding is correct?
Could you follow what he said? You could follow what he said. Could you just say it without the microphone?
You said that this happened in first Satyuga, which is in first month, but now we are in 7th month. So this happened 450 Satyuga before, right? That's what probably happened.
I'm glad you could understand his question. But it's not so linear. This is Manu number 7, but it's not from the very, 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 very beginning. This section of the Bhagavatam is very, very, very beginning. In other words, how many yuga cycles have passed to come to this is the 7th Manu, and which day of Brahma too. Okay, so, but in response to your question, eye contact here. There, in each day of Brahma, there are 1,000 yuga cycles in each day of Brahma, where it's not only Manu number 7, but it's a 27th yuga cycle of Manu number 7. There's lots of zeros that come before our present situation. So it's not so linear. It's describing circumstances during each Satya Yuga are similar. Each Kali Yuga are similar. Just like summer, fall, winter, spring. There's characteristics. But every summer isn't the same. Every winter is not the same. So they're characteristic, but it's not linear. So to answer, if your question is how long after this incident is our current situation, it would take a long time to calculate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay. Someone else. Okay. We'll end the class. Thank you all for coming. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.